There's brand new numbers on wholesale inflation today, which will not help because they show it, as you see on the right side of your screen, coming in at an alarming annual rate of 6%, highest in years. So Doug Flynn is here with us on all of that from Flynn Zito Capital Management. Boy, Mo, I can't believe this woman in Utah. I was going to ask you about that. That is something wrote a children's book about grief after she's convicted of killing her own husband. So we'll go back for that sentencing. But this, when I say they're worried about long-term inflation, there's been more and more articles written, including one today about that. It's like, all right, this is adding up now. You got a consumer inflation, now wholesale inflation, and maybe this is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, when you have the producer price index, which came out today, that's telling you that it's not only just, hitting the production of things, it's going to come down the line to ultimately translate into even higher prices as they pass that along to consumers in the retail price. And that's what this is a precursor. So you have this hot inflation report that came on the heels of yesterday's hot inflation report on the consumer side, and those two things do not add up to anything positive, and certainly makes it even harder for the Fed to talk about cutting. That being said, the war's got to get behind us, and then if oil prices drop, we could be looking at normalizing towards the end of the year. But now I think at the earliest, we're looking at the end of this year, which may not bode well for the midterm elections for the president.
Yeah, or the incoming chairman, who was just confirmed. I'm glad you brought up the Fed, because Kevin Warsh, the United States Senate, just confirmed him today to take Jay Powell's place as chairman of the Federal Reserve. And certainly the president, from his public commentary, is expecting his pick. Powell was his pick as well, by the way, but he's expecting his new pick, Warsh, to come in and cut rates. And you're saying, well, that might be a tough thing for him to justify?
Yeah, it's going to be the first big test for him. Next month, we have the first meeting. That's when we'll get to see the new face of the Fed, if you will. And he'll be the chairman for 4 years, and he'll be on the Fed for 14 years. We still have Powell on there, not as chairman after Friday, but he can stay on until January of 28. So he's one of those votes. He doesn't go away. But as Warsh comes in, you're going to start to see the markets react a little bit more to the Warsh version of things. And the first test is going to be very simply, is he going to defend inflation and the rates where they are, and possibly even raising them if we need to, or is he just going to look to lower rates because that's what Trump wants? And that's going to be the first test you're going to see.
Yeah, I think it'll be fascinating. Kevin Warsh has been, he's a fairly young guy. He's in his 50s, but he's been around a long time because he came up into the Fed when he was a very young guy. And they used to say he was an inflation hawk, a guy that maybe wouldn't want to cut rates at a time like this. That was the old Kevin Warsh, but you never know. It might still be Kevin Warsh. Is the economy getting better or worse? That's the larger question that was brought up in this poll. This is Yuka. And the people who, say that it's getting worse or in purple, right? So that is your 59%. So that's about 6 out of 10, okay? About the same, you add that in, and that's not great, that's 20%. And then, some people just don't know what's going on. They're not sure. But the point is, there's a lot of people said it's either or it's getting worse.
Yeah.
How do you see it?
Yeah, people don't live their life by GDP reports, right? Sure. They live it by what's the price at the grocery store, and every day as they're driving past 100 gas stations, seeing that in their face. Even if you don't have gas above $5, the premium gas is over $5 in many places. So you're seeing that every single day, and so that's making you feel like things are getting worse. And in fact, in the short term, they really are. It's only in the long term that things might actually get better, and it's hard for people to square that circle if they're surrounded by this every day, daily reminders or weekly reminders, and then, yes, it's getting worse in the short term. The long term, things look really good, but it's hard to get through the short term just to get to the long term.
Yes, it is. Saved by the Bell once again. Doug, thank you. Doug Flynn there.